Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I was so determined this time I wouldn't say good afternoon first. I was going to actually say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm very glad to welcome you to another webinar from us at the Global Healthcare Public Foundation. For us to be able to, this time what we're going to be doing. First and foremost, my name is Killian Songwe, and I work with the Global Healthcare Public Foundation. And we're going to be going in to discuss two primary things. We're going to look at the ISO management systems, and we're going to look at how to do remote audits. This is based on an ISO document, ISO 19011. And so we're going to have a conversation between the actual ISO body of standards and the utility for 19011 in remote assessments. But just before I get started, I want to play a short video. It's about 2 minutes long that actually allows you to know that this is practical. This is something that we've actually done at the Global Healthcare Public Foundation in conjunction with the South African Accreditation National Services, SANAS. And so we're going to show you this video. It's about 2 minutes long and it starts now.
Hello everyone, I'm going to give you a general layout of the laboratory, but first I'm going to begin with the general overview of the hospital, the new structure of which the laboratory is among the departments that were transferred here. If I can zoom in, that's the entrance, and if you follow that route, it will bring you to these other departments of the new structure. This is the new structure of which the laboratory is among the departments that are housed here. So if we can leave those structure alone, this is the main entrance of the laboratory area. This is where I'm going to. Then this is the waiting area for other departments, but our major focus right now is the laboratory area. So I'm moving to the laboratory main entrance. But before we enter, there is a waiting room for the people who are going to access laboratory services. Then the firefighting equipment, we have the fire extinguisher inside there, and then the hose reel for in case of a fire. So this is the inside of the lab. So here we have two entrances. The first, this is the flow cytometry workstation. We are having the BDFAX Presto, and then it's roller mixer where samples are mixed from. So basically that's it for the flow cytometry section. This is the chemistry workstation, the printer, the computer that supports the chemistry machine, and this is the chemistry machine that is running and its supplies.
Okay, great. Welcome back from that very short video. But the video actually was, in essence, that's a Kayonga hospital right here in Uganda. And we were able to manage this assessment between South Africa, Kampala, in Uganda, to be able to get this done. So you actually literally had people in 3 different places trying to make sure that this works. So basically, this is what we're going into. This is where we are, and this is what, if I may use the cliche, the next new normal is going to be. People are going to be all over the world, and wherever they would be, they're going to try to access their clients, whether it's going to be their clients, it's going to be stakeholders, it's going to be board members. They're going to try to access them from all over the world. And what we have here is a situation where people are going to have to reach people in real time. So as we go forward, what is a management system basically? A management system is a way in which an organization manages the interrelated parts, the different parts moving of its business to ensure in order to achieve its objectives. So you manage the related parts to ensure that you achieve an objective, because you want to make sure that the quality that your clients are used to having, they can always get that quality at any given time. So when they're talking about quality, you're also talking about performance, you're talking about the health and safety of the staff. You're looking at all of those things at the very same time. There's some very straightforward benefits to doing effective management systems, from efficient use of resources to improve financial performance, reduce risk, risk management gets better, increase capability to deliver consistent and improved services is a very important thing that you want to be able to achieve with effective management systems. But when we talk about the ISO, there is a whole management systems of standards that actually exist around this. And basically with the management systems of standards, what we get is organizations get a chance to improve their performance by specifying repeatable steps. So we know that if a step is going to be repeated, regardless of how many employees we may have in the organization, we are sure that they're going to repeat it in the exact same way every time, each time they do it. And this creates an organizational culture. And this organizational culture is very important, because what you get from an organizational culture is a cycle of self-evaluation. People continuously evaluate themselves because that's what their culture is. And this self-evaluation certainly leads to improvement in operations. But of course, it's always based on a strong background of leadership and commitment. So we have the management system standards. And basically, just to highlight those three, there is the 9001, which is the quality management system, 27001, information technology, and the 14001. The reason why I chose to start off with these three is because 9001 quality management system is actually the bedrock for all management system documents. And it actually details what the quality systems that are needed are going to be. And then, of course, today's age, everybody is going to be using information technology, but we need to be able to appreciate the security standards. We need to be able to appreciate what is going on with cloud information. Then, of course, environmental management systems and occupational health and safety, those two are also big these days. But when we talk about sector-specific management standards, I'm looking, for example, and there are a bunch of them, but I'm looking at, in this case, medical devices, quality management. Railway also has a standard that actually governs how the things are going to move around. And of course, 29001, which deals with the petroleum and petrochemical and natural gas industries. All these standards actually ensure that repeated steps are actually done in a way that ensures that every result that is gotten can actually be measured from the very first result. Then, of course, there are benefits to this, and there is a reason why the ISO set so many different number of standards out there for people to use. Implementation guidance, say, for example, in food safety. This is a technical systems document, and basically, you also have 1009, which basically provides guidelines. So there are a number of ISO documents that are out there that are very useful, whether it provides guidelines in how you're going to use a specific standard. But what is of interest today to us is the guidelines for auditing management systems. Because what we want to look at today is we want to look at how you can audit management systems remotely, especially in the COVID-19 era. But just before we jump into auditing management systems, there are also very standard guides that you could look at in terms of social responsibility. Organizations, as they begin to come back, they want to be able to share in some of the social responsibility. There is a whole standard around that. Then, of course, there is going to be the issues of risk management as you reopen. And again, there is a standard for risk management. Now, this is a very basic fact that is out there. A total of 1.6 million valid certificates were recorded in 2016 as compared to 1.5 million in 2015. That's an increase in 8% from 2015 in terms of new standards, certificates that have been issued to organizations. Therefore, there certainly is a great benefit in being certified to one of the ISO standards. So in the process of certification, you have conformity assessments. A product, service, or system meets a required standard. Under the conformity assessment process, there are a number of benefits. It provides consumers and stakeholders with confidence. They know that your repeatable steps have been ensured. It gives companies a competitive edge. There are only 1.6 million of them out there. And then it helps to regulate and ensure the health and safety or environmental conditions are met when you do work. So talking about conformity assessment, there are three words here that are really important as we talk about doing remote audits and we talk about conformity assessments. The first of them is certification, which is provisioned by an independent body of written assurance that the product, service, or system in question meets specific requirements. And those requirements will certainly come out of a given standard, a known standard. It could be 17025 for calibration labs. It could be 15189 for medical laboratories. It could be a number of standards that are out there, 29001 for the petroleum industry. Then there is another word, testing. Determination of one or more of an object or product's characteristics. And the example that I would use in this case is blood. If you take blood in a serological test from anybody or animal, for that matter, you're going to be making a determination that the product characteristics have been met. There is a specific range for which you expect results to be able to come out in. Then the next word is inspection. Inspection describes the regular checking of a product to make sure it meets specified criteria. And the best one I could think about, thinking about safety, ISO 15190 in terms of medical safety, is just looking at fire extinguishers, just checking them regularly to make sure that they are safe for use. Then, of course, there is the other word, which is accreditation, which is formal recognition that a certification body operates according to a set international standard. And we've already seen the word certification. So basically, there are different levels of standards, and there is what they call the high-level structure of standards. And within the high-level structure of standards, there are a number of standards that are actually categorized in this level. And basically, within the high-level structure of standards, it basically says that they all follow the same format. And when they all follow the same format, what that allows us to do is it allows us to be able to have what we call the integrated use of management system standards. So all standards that have the high-level structure could actually be integrated. I'll give you an example. At the Global Healthcare Public Foundation, we are actually in the process of getting certified to 14001 and 45001. But as we do that, we're actually going through an integrated process with the 9001, because our 9001, 14001, and 45001 standards all have a high-level structure, which means these standards all have the same familiar structure. Therefore, you could actually integrate them. So talking about the integrated standards, there are actually basically 3 chapters in the guidelines on how to form an integrated management standard. Chapter 1 describes the fundamentals of a management system. Chapter 2 describes the structure and content. And Chapter 3 describes how the organization should integrate the different standards that it wants to work with. And I'm just going to go on and show you these 3 chapters in terms of, so when you look at Chapter 1, it talks about the systems, the components, and the relationships between the different standards. In our case, it will be 9001, 14001 for environmental, and 45001 for occupational health. So Chapter 1 will basically integrate the first 4 clauses of each of these standards, because in a high-level structure, they're basically the same. Chapter 2 talks about foundation. It talks about the application. What are going to be the objectives from the management system standards? How are they going to be applied, and its implementation within the organization? And then chapter 3, which is the last chapter in the integrated management system standards, it talks about how prepared are you? What are the connections between the standards that you want to integrate? How would they be incorporated? You'd have to do an analysis, you find out what the gaps are, how you close the gaps. And then last but not least is how are you going to sustain this integration of a number of different standards? I just put out this list just for information's sake. There are at least 91 management system standards out there. And of the 91 management system standards, 21 of them have high-level structures. So what does that mean? It basically means that of those 21 standards with a high-level structure, if you were actually doing business in a multiple number of fields that needed many of these standards, you could actually have an integrated management system standard that pulls as many of the standards together as possible. And I think that's a very beautiful thing about how you manage the standards and how you actually use the standards. As we move into remote auditing, one of the big things that is going to be out there is big data. There has to be enough cloud capacity to hold all the data that we need to have. We need to think about devices from sensors to be able to pick up the right kinds of pictures, antennas. We need to think about microcontrol. And then we need to think about what is the hub system going to look like before we talk about interface, analyze our different businesses and think about issues of confidentiality, encryptions, and then back-end systems that we need to have to be able to manage this big data as we collect them and as we use them in remote audits. So basically, what's a remote audit? We've come to do e-introductions. We send out emails and say, I'm going to e-introduce you to so-and-so. And that's exactly what happens with audits. Now we're moving into e-audits, an electronic or remote obtained audit, where we're looking at how do we get the evidence. Audits are all about objective evidence and evaluating in an objective fashion to be able to determine the extent of conformity. The extent of conformity is very important to be able to ensure that the audit criteria has actually been met. So there are a couple of channels, as I mentioned earlier on. It could be a basic phone call. It could be video conferencing, which most people have moved to. It could be a chat, direct chat, or now WhatsApp video captures. And then, of course, it could also be emails at the same time. Then now what we have here then is, this is, I took this out of McKinsey, but this is what our next new normal looks like. This is a gentleman revisiting agile teams after an abrupt shift in remote work. He now has to work from home, controlling different systems. And then the picture to the right is most probably one of the most traditional pictures of today. You're going to have to multitask between babysitting, home chores, and actually being able to deliver. So what are the things that are going to be audited remotely? What can you actually audit remotely? It says every activity within the management system could surely be audited remotely. You could review documents and records, witnessing and observation. And then, of course, you could carry out interviews. So this is a schematic which I put together to look at the roadmap, because basically, if you're going to do a remote audit, there are literally 3 phases to it. You have to prepare for the audit, you have to perform the audit, and then you kind of close the audit. And if you're going to prepare for the audit, you need to, for a remote audit, you need to have the right software. You need to have internet access, and this could mean many things depending on where you are in the world. And then, of course, you need to have the documentation of the organization that you are going to conduct the remote audit from, and the proper hardware, and an agenda. What is the agenda that is going to be shared, or what is the agenda that is going to be used? Then we move on to actually performing the audit. As you try to perform the audit, of course, there is going to be an opening meeting. That's the first thing that happens. There's going to be an opening meeting. At the opening meeting, you need to have the presence of the people. The people need to be, of the organization, need to be present. And this could certainly, it's going to be Zoom, and it could be any media Skype or any of them. And the people could be in very different places. They do not necessarily have to be at the location or the site of the organization. Then, of course, you're going to be able to carry out interviews. And I put a red dot next to interviews because you can actually record these interviews as they actually go on. And then you can actually do observations, documents, and records. Then you get to the last phase of it, which is the reporting. And again, with the reporting, there is going to be a report, there is going to be a closeout meeting. At the closeout meeting, again, you need people to be there, everybody needs to be present. You could share screens, and I'm going to show you some examples of us actually doing remote assessments. And then again, you could do recording. So there are two very important points here where we're doing recording. We're doing recording as we actually perform the audit, and then we're doing recording as we go into closing, because there are very important things that could come up at both points, and we want to be able to document them as a part of the record of the audit or the assessment, as the case might be. So as we prepare, this is some really important things to think about. You might, because you cannot actually get to the client's organization, it might be nice to have a floor plan of the organization. What that does is it gives you a mental picture of the layout of what you're going to be auditing. You could actually be in your office, and you could still take a tour, a mental tour of what you're auditing, because you have a floor plan. So I made up this floor plan. This is a made up floor plan of what would be a medical laboratory or a clinical laboratory of some sort. And the things you need to be thinking about is what kind of space are you going to audit? What does the infrastructure look like? What kind of hardware or webcam is going to be used? Does it have sound? Do you already have all the documentations? You need to have a map of the place. Some kind of a surrogate features. Confidentiality and security is paramount, and we're going to discuss confidentiality down the line. So this is a remote audit that you're going to do, and you know the conference room. Most of the people might be in the conference room. There might be somebody in room 3, which is the chemistry lab. You want to know where the emergency showers are and things like that. It's important to know these things because you want to be able to have a pictorial view. So now that you have a floor plan, you want to share an agenda with the auditees. Basically, I do this for a specific reason. I'm attaching the floor plan and a structure, as well as I attach the agenda and the same structure, because I want people to recognize what is going to be happening. So at 8 o'clock, between 8 and 8:30, the activity is going to be the opening meeting. And where is the opening meeting going to be? It's going to be in room 8. Room 8 is the conference room. So I have a mental picture of where room 8 is, and I could actually talk about room 8 while I'm having the audit. What are the documents that will be needed while I'm in room 8? Basically, I'm going to need the sign-in sheet. I'm going to need a confidentiality form, both from the auditor and the auditee, if the case be. And then who are the responsible people for the 8 to 8:30 time? All the laboratory personnel in this case. So that is going to happen. And again, this is just an agenda that I made up. So we're not going to be between 8:30 and 10 o'clock. We're not just going to be hanging around. There are activities that are going to happen. But from 10 to 10:45, the activity would be a test. There's a test we want to actually observe how it's done. And in this case, it's going to be in the chemistry lab. So what are the documents that we need? We need the standard operating procedure for that test, which means as an auditor, I would have that standard procedure with me, because I already got it earlier on as a part of preparing for this audit. And then who will be the responsible person? The scientist who is actually going to be carrying out the test, which means, again, I'm going to need a camera to be able to do a proper observation so that I could actually see what is going on. I'm going to need the standard operating procedure so I could actually read the steps as the procedure is being undertaken. I could also have a conversation with the scientist in real time if I want to ask a question. So this is what is going to be shared between the auditor and the auditee, so that there is a very good understanding and there is a very good use of time. So I would be working most probably from my home or my office. I need to have a screen that can allow me to see the evidence as it is being shown. I need to have a writing pad where I can take my notes. But most importantly, I need to have the criteria document. In this case, it's going to be the ISO standard to which the objective evidence is being sought from. And if I had enough money, I would most probably have two large screens in front of me, one screen to receive information and one screen to pipe out the information that I have. But if not, I would just use the one computer I have and have a small window in which I could share information. So again, this is not just going, if you're going to do an audit, there has to be a clear scope of what is going to be covered. And again, I'm using one that we've done before. Sometime in 2019, we did an audit. We looked at what areas did we look at, for example, internal and external issues. We did an audit. In this case, this was a 9001 audit we did for a facility. Who are the interested parties? What are the policies? What are the procedures that are used? And then on the 29th, we didn't go back. This is the beauty about doing a remote audit. You can actually schedule and you can actually have the convenience of working with the auditee with their schedule and making sure that the audit is done properly. On the 30th, we had an internal audit, management review, looked at the corrective actions, and then we had an auditor's closeout meeting. So this is just a layout, a very interesting layout, and I have thrown in here, this is another audit that we, an assessment that we actually did. And here you have, it starts off with an interview, there are documents that are received, and then what you're seeing there is a shared screen, basically. You have shared screens, you can take screenshots. To my top right hand, you have the auditors, and you have, this is a shared screen where you're seeing all the assessors together. You're actually seeing part of this laboratory that was being assessed. Documents and records that need to be reviewed, hard copies are being made available, and then there is an actual interview, an actual exchange that goes on between, in this case, the assessors and the laboratory. So there's some challenges with remote audits. It's still very new. It's things that we're still trying. Most people are still trying to work around this, but there's some very new challenges with it. It could be the Wi-Fi, it could be noise, you could be in a place and all of a sudden there is construction that started yesterday. This is well before you made your plans. It could be also a poor camera. You just don't have a nice camera to use, your webcam is bad. It could also be poor lighting if your lab or the facility that needs to be audited or assessed is in a basement, the lighting might be poor. It could also be low battery on the camera that is going to be used, poor power stability. You could have power cuts that are very frequent. And this is one that is always a big challenge. Adherence to schedule meeting times by auditees. Just ensuring that the auditees are there. If you send an agenda and you tell the auditees, we're going to start at 8 o'clock, ensuring that all the key members are there at 8 o'clock. It's always been a challenge. We've done this a number of times. And every time we've had a challenge, either on the side of the auditee or on the side of the auditor. You're going to see that sometimes. And then, of course, emails might just hang. They might just not be going through for one reason or another. So those could be some challenges you would face trying to do a remote audit or an audit of the management system. Then, of course, I mentioned earlier on confidentiality and sensitive evidence. Confidentiality is a really big thing. It's very important. In spite of the fact that this audit is going to be done remotely, you're not going to be conducting the audit when you have a bunch of people standing behind you who have no business in the audit. Somebody might say something, somebody might share a document with you, and somebody who has absolutely no business with the audit or with the organization being audited might now be privy to information that they should normally not have had. So confidentiality is a very important thing. If you're going to do the audit from home or from your office, make sure that you put a sign on your door that says you're busy or that you cannot be accessed at that time. And then, of course, there is confidentiality of the documentation. Now, remember that these documents are going to be sent to you. There are many things that could happen. You might want to take the documents from your workplace to your home in the evening, and you could end up, God forbid, in an accident and the documents will be flying all over the place. So you need to be, the confidentiality around documentation is equally just as important. Then as you've now prepared for it, you've performed the audit, and then you move towards the close. Now you have to do a report. Of course, you had a closing meeting where you discussed the findings, and now you're getting ready to do the report. Present the audit findings and conclusions to the auditee. Again, you're going to be able to share your screen, have a conversation with them. And this is something that I strongly recommend. It's always in the opening meetings, just like in the closing meetings, to actually ask the auditee and yourself as the auditor to turn on your cameras, just so that there is a facial recognition. And so as you go on to do the audit, you actually know, you have a picture of who you're speaking with and who you might be auditing at that specific time. Create a slide of each finding so that you can share with the auditee. Present the report, video conferencing, share the screen so that they can see your screen, just as I'm doing now. Then acceptance of the non-conformities and conclusions to them is a very important thing. And then most important as well, there needs to be a record that the meeting actually happened and that there were people there. So you would actually make sure that the attendance sheet, which was filled at the beginning, that there is one that is also filled at the end. So as we get into what is called the next new normal, there are certainly advantages to be able to do this remote audits and do some remote work. Higher quality of review of documentation. Now you could actually review the documents in the luxury of your own time. Auditors can review documents and notes offline. The pressure of doing them in real time also ceases. Of course, reduced travel cost is a very big thing, reduced travel cost. And then you have more hours to do work, or you have a reasonable amount of hours to work around your 8-hour day. But of course, there are certainly challenges. That exist with remote auditing. Of course, you lack the ability to be able to, you cannot walk through the facility and actually see what you want to see. You're only going to see what the camera allows you to see. When you do remote auditing, your chances to be able to give tips is much more reduced because you cannot feel the people on the other side. You get to lose some of the connection. So you're kind of sort of limited to the work at hand, and the opportunity to give tips doesn't come as frequently as often. Improvement opportunities. Yes, there might be improvement opportunities on the side of the auditor. There might be improvement opportunities on the side of the auditee. But in terms of that interaction and being able to show some improvement opportunities, that gets lost. I kind of put this last one in the shade, opportunities for fraud. Of course, this is not a real-time event, and so many things could happen. And my best word for it at this time is just called fraud. So I have a couple of pictures here as I come to an end. This is our own experience. If you look at on the left-hand side, you can see the gentleman, one of the devices he's using his phone, and he's in connection with in this case, the assessor. And then you have a bunch of people around a laptop having a conversation. They're going through an interview with the assessor. This is the camera taking itself down to the filing room to be able to ascertain the fact that there is a true filing room and that the documents are filed as said. Again, this is a set of technician scientists going through the same assessment. To my right, this is part of the management team going through some management debriefs. And again, as I would always continue to do as we live in the COVID era, there are a couple of things that we have to continue doing. We have to be mindful of our body temperature. We have to keep washing our hands at least for 20 seconds and not less. Keep washing with running water, sanitize in the absence of running water and soap. And then, of course, wear a face mask, but this does not mean that we're not going to continue to observe social distances. We're going to do all of those, and we'll still continue to have a social distancing observed. So with that, I think I've given you a good introduction to how we could go around remote audits of management systems. And the management systems, as I said earlier on, there are 21 different management systems rated as high-level structures, which could be integrated and audited at once. So this is my presentation for you today. At this point, I would stop and entertain some comments, questions, some suggestions, things you would like to see done in the future. So if you have any questions, please just go into the chat room and type them out, and I'll be able to see them on the side, or just put up your hand and wave, and would allow you to speak, and the rest of the world can hear you. So basically, what I was trying to do here, what I tried to do here was I actually tried to make a marriage between management system standards, integrated standards, and the guideline for auditing management systems, so that we could actually have a conversation. So you could actually see the traceability behind, if you're going to use 19011 as a management auditing document against a management system, you know what to do, how to do it. That's what we're trying to do here. Okay. The first question coming up, who is this? Bright has his hand up. Please go on and speak. I think you've been unmuted.
Okay, yeah. Can you hear me? Good.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Yes. Good afternoon, Prof. Thank you for your good work. Nicely presented as usual. I just wanted to probably look at things from a cost perspective.
Yes.
Since you have actually summarized all these audits, probably could be done in about 21 steps instead of a 91. Have you looked at that kind of cost, so that in case an organization that is big enough to look at that high management level auditing could probably look at it? You know, some of these organizations actually bid for things, so they could actually factor those costs in. Maybe it will be easier to probably share that kind of information. So I just wanted to chip that in and see how you look at it from your perspective. Other than that, congratulations. Thank you.
By the way, Kofi, where are you calling from today?
I'm in Dakar, Senegal.
Oh, great. Dakar, Senegal. Very warm out there, I know, at this time of the year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, as I said, there are 21 high-level structured documents. It's going to be very impossible to try to integrate those 21 documents, because these are 21 high-level structured documents, but these are 21 high-level structured documents that belong to different industries. So it could be the petroleum industry, it could be health and safety, it could be environment, it could actually even be food service. So it depends on if you're running a conglomerate and you're doing a multiple number of things. You're actually into food production, you're actually into milking, and you're actually you have a safety department. Yes, then you might actually have a number of the high-level structured documents that you could actually pull together and have an integrated document. And then with that integrated document, instead of having 5 or 6 different audit teams coming out to audit each of the management systems, you could now pull together. But again, you're going to have to find an accrediting body or a certification body that has the competencies to be able to pull together an auditing body, an auditing team that will be able to audit all those different management systems at the same time. So in our case, at the Global Healthcare Public Foundation, the standards that we have put into our integrated system, the 9001 for quality management systems, 14,001 for environment, and 45,001 for occupational health. These are pretty straightforward standards, and they constitute part of the 1.6 million standards that I said that do have certification at the beginning. So it's easier to get a pool of auditors to audit that kind of integrated system. It might be hard to get a team of auditors who are going to audit a petroleum management system, which is also combined with a food processing system, because you are going to certainly need auditors from completely different industries. But again, difficult, but not impossible. It depends on the auditing or the certifying body. They might be able to pull those auditors together. And certainly, as long as you're doing an integrated management system, it is certainly cheaper to audit an integrated management system than it is to audit a standalone silo-like systems. Thanks, by the way, Kofi.
Thank you, Prof. Yeah. But well, given my background, I was probably looking at it from the public health and the laboratory system point of view. But you have explained it, so thank you so much. Thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you so much. Okay. I guess this was very simple and straightforward. Again, I'm going to invite you to reach out to us. We could help your organization with a lot of the standards if you want to, if you're looking at doing certification and be part of the 1.6 million organizations out there in certifications. You could certainly reach out to us and we'll be very glad to walk you through the process and do the journey with you and get you through the certification process, depending on what the management system is that you're trying to get certified. Okay. Any comments, any questions, any ideas, any new thoughts?
Hey, Kilian, it's Nelson. Hi.
Yes, Nelson, it's always nice to have you.
Indeed, thank you. I think this is great stuff, and I'm just thinking that you know, undertaking a full comprehensive audit would usually require the establishment of a rapport with auditees that would be challenged using a remote procedure. I'm just thinking that this might be a very, very useful tool for a supplemental audit. In other words, if you have already established a rapport with the auditees and you are using remote auditing mechanisms as really supplemental audit, it would be, in my uneducated mind, if I should say, as far as management systems are concerned, it would be very, very difficult to, right from the beginning, the first audit of the auditee, to undertake a remote audit. What would your comment to that be? Thank you.
Nelson, I just happen to know you, so I know that yeah, uneducated mind is very educated. So, but thanks so much indeed for calling in and for that comment. And yes, you're absolutely 100% correct. It truly depends on the complexity of what is going to be audited. In today's age, looking at COVID and looking at molecular testing, that's a pretty high level complexity exercise that needs to happen. So if you're going to do that, the hardware needs to be absolutely very robust. You need to have excellent cameras. You need to have excellent internet so that in real time, if I were doing an observation, in real time, I could actually see what is happening. Now, if those things are not there, yes, you're absolutely right. For a first-time audit, it might be a little bit challenging to be able to do that or to be able to see what is going on. So again, depending on the complexity of what has to be audited and also depending on the robustness of the hardware and software that you're actually using, you could actually make a decision if you're going to do remote auditing for a first time, or you absolutely are only going to keep it for a surveillance. But again, if you were to do a management system audit for something like 9001, certainly, yeah, you could do that even as an initial on remote, because you're basically going to be looking at a bunch of system documents, a bunch of procedures, ensuring that those things can be sent to you. And again, as a part of the preparatory work, a lot of these documents will be sent to you. A lot of these documents will be sent to you to be able to work with. So it's a tricky situation. It's one where each auditing body is going to have to make a decision. Depending on the complexity, do we want to do this on the first time, or do we want to do this as a surveillance? Depending on the management system that has to be audited, how complex is it, and what's the familiarity of the region, what's the culture of the place, all of those things have to be taken into consideration. But yes, I must agree with you that it's going to be tricky, but this is what our next new normal is going to look like. We're going to have to cross some of those bridges in real time.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you for calling in.
Hey, Prof.
Connie has a hand up. Connie, would you go on and speak, please?
Thank you, Prof, for a great presentation. I see this kind of, like you said, it's a new normal, but it's not just applicable to auditing, but so much more, like even support, supervision, giving support to the periphery, and it could be applicable in that way. I guess my question is, what is the foundation doing to engage different stakeholders to take this up as a way of maybe implementing and extending support to the periphery labs?
Thanks, Connie. Thanks very much indeed for that question. That's a really good question. What are we doing? Actually, we're doing a lot of these webinars. Actually, that's, I think, one of the first things that we've tried to do. And we're actually trying to reach out to a bunch of people in the different fields. We're in the agricultural field. We're also looking at petroleum. We're in healthcare. We're in medical devices as well. We're in agriculture. We're in hospitality. So there are a bunch of standards that are either directly related to these fields or actually cross-related standards that are used in this field. So we're making a number of what I would call consortiums. We're talking with a lot of some of the big industry players. We're having that conversation right now with a number of them to see how we can bring some synergies to our different operations and how we can get some of these remote assessments. As a matter of fact, next week, we're going to be doing a remote audit in the country of Cote d'Ivoire. And then a few weeks from now, we're going to be doing a big exercise in the country of Cameroon. And we're all going to be doing that out of Uganda. So we're doing a lot of things and we're doing them across different frontiers. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So could this be extended even not just, but also with support supervision and kind of follow up instead of going to the field, but just following up virtually?
With support supervision, I must say that's something we've been doing. We started doing supervision remotely. We've been doing that as just part of our traditional business for a long, long time. Whether it's phone calls, emails, or just asking people to do things on WhatsApp. We've been doing that for a long time, and it has actually worked very well for us. We actually have a whole system in place and a timetable and a schedule for how we do a remote support supervision. And we're doing it in the scientific industry, in healthcare, which has its own challenges. And I think it's worked very well for us in the last 17 years. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Right.
Thank you so much indeed for calling in. Joe Usaga on Facebook. How do you ensure vertical audit is adequate, and what is the cost implication involved in sustaining 15189, I guess? How do you ensure that the vertical audit is accurate? Again, what is going to happen when you do the remote auditors? It's a three-part audit. Part one, you have to prepare, and the preparation is both ways. So it's preparation on the part of the auditor and preparation on the part of the auditee. So there is a huge volume of documents depending on what management standard you want to audit. In this case, you mentioned 15189. You need to actually ensure that all the necessary procedures are available. And then you need to study them, because what is going to happen is during the audit, when you perform the audit, you can now move on to actually do a proper observation. And this is an observation which you wouldn't be blinded to, because you would actually have the standard with you, and you would ask the auditee to execute a specific task according to the standard that they have. Again, this does not stop the auditee from using the standard, but now again, it also depends on how robust the camera is that they're using, so that it gives you a broader vision, the wideness of the picture, so that you can actually assess what is actually going on in real time. So it really wouldn't matter whether it's a horizontal audit or a vertical audit. You could actually see in real time. And again, if you go back to the slides that I used, when you look at the schedule, if you said, for example, that at 10 o'clock to 10:45, you wanted to audit, let's say, because you mentioned 15189, you wanted to audit a syphilis test between 10 and 10:45. So between 10 and 10:45, the serology session should be set up, the syphilis test should be available, and now you could now ask the scientist who is available to take you through the process of how do they bring the reagents to temperature for use, how is the test actually set up, has the test actually done? And you could have a real-time conversation with the scientists. You could hear them, you could see them, and then you will make notes on your side, and you could actually see how they get the results that they get. So in terms of doing a vertical audit, I think that's a phenomenal way of actually ensuring that you get the technical requirements of the ISO 15189 actually followed up, ensure that it is done, and then you go to the last piece of the audit process, which would now be the closing and then the report from the audit. So I'm very convinced that it shouldn't be that much of a problem to do a remote audit, whether it's a horizontal or a vertical audit. Thanks so much indeed for joining and for the question. Okay. Any more comments? As I said, I just noted that I was a little muted, but I was actually inviting people who are interested to please, if you want to have your organization certified to any of the standards, especially the 9001 is an extremely simple standard to get certified to. In less than 90 days, we could get you through the process at a very reasonable fee, as I like to tell people all the time. But there are a number of management standards we could work with you on. And then, of course, as I said earlier on, there are the standards that have a high-level structure, which we could help you integrate and reduce the cost on having multiple audits done at the same time or done at different times of your financial year. Okay. Hello. Again, let's see, I guess. Hello. Hello, I hear somebody saying hello.
Yes, this is Magero. How are you, Professor?
Sorry?
This is Magero. How are you?
Yes, Mr. Magero.
Pleasure. I have just a comment on the same. I feel like maybe I would share with you something on the same.
Could you please say that again? I couldn't hear you. Yes, hello.
Well, I'm really glad that I've gotten some good information from your presentation. But I've also noticed that there are a lot of disadvantages of this process of auditing. So I wanted just to get from you, have you shared the concept of doing this kind of audit with the third-party conformity assessment bodies? And what is their thought on this? Noting that most companies or institutions would be looking for conformity assessment bodies to ascertain their certification or accreditation. With this, have you shared with them, and what is their thought on the same? Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Magero, for the question. The slides I did show earlier on, I showed you some of our own story. We've had the luxury to be able to do this with SANAS. We've actually done, I think we've done about 6 of these with SANAS. So I think we've done a number of them on both sides where it gives us some experience, something to be able to talk about. We're looking forward to doing one soon with the accrediting body out of West Africa. So we're working with a number of different accrediting bodies to be able to do this remotely. And it's actually giving us the advantage to be able to continue to share experience and to be able to continue to tweak this. This is going to be the next new science, and it's going to be the next new way of doing this. So I think we're already in the game with one of the big accrediting bodies. We're looking forward to sharing the same with a few more on the continent and continuing to do more of the same. But I know that there is a good demand. There is a huge demand. We get calls almost every other number of days where people are saying to us, we heard you did it, can we do it? Who could you refer us to? So we know that there is a huge demand, and I'm very convinced that the accrediting bodies or the certification bodies are certainly going to be looking in this direction. And so we're excited to be a part of it as it builds. Thank you. Okay, I think we are just on the hour. Usually this is the time when I ask people to be able to try to reach out to us and be able to share any information that they have so that we might be able to help them. If they have a need, we'll be very glad to help them get through their certification or accreditation, as the case might be. So we look forward to more of the same. Have a wonderful rest of the week. I wish you a very phenomenal week ahead and a great rest of the afternoon or evening, or depending on where you are. It is indeed my pleasure. See you next week, same time, same place. Thank you so very much indeed.